The thing about building something with your hands, with trust, a life, is that you learn to notice the fine lines. The hairline cracks. You feel them before you see them. I was sanding the edge of a cedar table the morning it really hit me. The grain was tight, clean, work I was proud of. The kind of piece that made tide and timber what it is to this town. But my thoughts weren't on the table. They kept circling back to the night before, when Anna had smiled at her phone and tilted it away as I walked by. It wasn't much, just a flick of the wrist, but I felt it like a splinter in the palm. I kept sanding. Slow strokes. The rasp of grit-on would fill the silence. Out the open window, I could hear gulls wheeling over the harbor and the soft rhythm of waves brushing the pier. Normally, it steadied me. Not today. And I have been married 23 years. We've built a quiet, solid life together. Nothing flashy. Just Sunday mornings on the porch, her humming as she folded laundry, me fixing a cabinet door that wouldn't sit quite right. Simple things. But lately, something shifted. She's more distant. Her laughter used to land like music. Lately, it sounds rehearsed, like she's laughing for someone else. I'm not a man prone to suspicion. Serve in the Marines long enough to learn that jumping at shadows costs you. I like facts, patterns, truth you can square up and measure. That's why this gnawing feeling unsettles me, because I can't yet put my finger on it, and still, it won't let go. She's been working late more often. Something about a new project at the community center. I'd be lying if I said I remembered all the details, she tells me. I nod, but it's the way she tells it that sticks. Like she's filling time with words, not sharing her day. Once, I called her around 8:30 just to see if she wanted me to bring by dinner. She answered on the third ring, breathless, and said she was just about to head home. Then I heard a man's voice in the background. Muffled. Quick. She hung up fast. That's when the table slipped from my grip. It wasn't finished yet, the edge still rough. Left a line of splinters in my hand. I didn't curse. Just stare at the blood welling up, then wiped it on a rag. The pain was sharp, focused. Easier to handle than the ache under my ribs. That night we sat at the dinner table. Chicken, rice, steamed vegetables. I watched her pick at the food, her phone face down beside her plate. We talked, but it wasn't a conversation. It was two people maintaining sound. You've been quiet lately, I said. Try to keep my voice even. She glanced up, forced a smile. Just tired. Long day. And that was that. I nodded. Took another bite. The clink of my fork on the plate felt louder than it should have. Later, I called my brother Jacob. We don't talk often. He's a few towns over, but I needed someone who knew both of us, someone who could be honest. You think I'm imagining things? I asked, leaning against the porch railing, the night air cool against my face. The boards creaked under my weight. I built this porch myself 2 summers back. Jacob was quiet a moment. You're not the type to imagine things, Eli. You what? You listen. If something feels off, maybe it is. Doesn't mean it's what you think. But don't ignore it. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. The ocean breeze carried salt and something else, something faint. Jasmine, maybe. Anna had worn that scent once years ago. Stay alert, Jacob added. But stay steady. Don't go making something worse just to prove you're right. Yeah, I said. That's the hard part. We hung up, and I sat there a long time, listening to the distant hush of waves and the occasional car rolling by. The next morning, I woke early. Couldn't sleep. My hands still stung where the splinters had gone in. Down in the kitchen, the house was still. Anna's keys were missing from the hook. A note on the counter said she'd left early for a meeting. I poured myself a coffee, black, and walked into the study. It wasn't a room we used often, mostly for bills and tax files. But the computer was still logged in from when she used it the night before. I almost didn't look. but something told me to trust my gut. A tab was open, email. Not hers. A shared account we used for vendor orders back when we were fixing up the house. The subject line read, "Looking forward to Friday." Same place. No name. No context. Just a timestamp from after midnight. I stared at the screen. The cursor blinked. My breath caught for a second. Same place. I closed the laptop slowly, my heart heavy with questions. Was it just a harmless exchange? A friend? A misunderstanding? Or had I just seen the first thread of something unraveling? Either way, I knew this much. It wasn't nothing, and I wasn't going to let it slide. I've always believed the truth has a sound. It doesn't shout, it hums low, steady, waiting for you to listen. And once you hear it, you can't unhear it. It was raining the next night, a soft, cold drizzle that soaked the workshop roof and tapped against the windows like a metronome. I was sitting at the old oak desk in the back office, the one Anna and I picked up at a yard sale, our first year married. I kept thinking about that email. Same place. The words repeated in my mind like a loose screw rattling in a drawer. I hadn't brought it up to her. Not yet. I needed to be sure. Jumping to conclusions wasn't my way. Not in the core, not in life. You don't engage until you have the full picture. So I did something I never thought I'd do. When Anna came home that night, she was distant but warm. Gave me a light kiss on the cheek, damp from the rain. Said she was tired. Went upstairs early. I waited until I heard the shower running. Then I walked into the mudroom, opened her purse, hands trembling just enough to make me angry with myself, and found her phone. It was unlocked. I told myself I'd only look for a minute. Just enough to ease the knot in my chest. The messages weren't hard to find. The thread under a name I didn't recognize, Ben, work project. I opened it. My breath stuck halfway in my throat. Ben, last night was perfect. You looked amazing in that dress. Anna, you always say the right things. Ben, same place Friday. Anna, I'll make sure he's working late. I stood there staring. The sound of the shower stopped upstairs. I quickly slipped the phone back, closed the purse, and stepped out onto the porch like I was just checking the weather. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. Rain slicked the wood beneath my boots. I leaned against the post, gripping the railing so tightly the old pine creaked under my fingers. She's seeing someone, and she's planning around me to do it. The truth hummed, low and cruel, and now I couldn't ignore it. I stayed out there until the house lights went out. Didn't trust my face not to show something. The rain had seeped into my jacket, and I didn't care. I felt hollow, like someone had carved out my center and left me standing in the shell. The next morning, I drove to the diner. Needed coffee. Space. I took my usual corner booth, still early enough that the place was mostly empty. The waitress, Jean, brought my mug without asking, like she always had. Then Jacob walked in. He must have read something in my posture, because he slid into the booth without a word. Just nodded. I stared into the steam curling from the cup. It's her, I said. He didn't ask what I meant. He just waited. She's seeing someone. I saw the messages. He let out a quiet sigh. You okay? No, I said, but I will be. I told him everything, the email, the text thread, the way she made sure I wouldn't be around. When I finished, he leaned back, arms crossed. Ben, he asked. Ben who? I didn't recognize the number, I said. But the tone, it was familiar. I pulled out my phone, opened the Photos app, scrolled back, and then I saw it. A picture from last year's Chamber of Commerce mixer. Anna smiling beside me, and just over her shoulder, Ben. City planner. Used to work with her on that downtown revitalization board. I remembered him now, tall, polished, the kind of guy who shakes your hand with a little too much eye contact. He'd complimented her earrings that night, said something about how some people have a presence. I didn't like him then. I hate him now. It wasn't just that she betrayed me. It was that she'd done it with someone tied to something we'd built together, our standing in the community, the causes we supported side by side, our shared life. She hadn't just stepped outside our marriage. She'd stepped into something that touched every part of what we'd grown. I left the diner without finishing my coffee, drove to the workshop, unlocked the door, and stood in the sawdust-stained silence. My tools waited on the wall, lined up like soldiers. The cedar table from earlier still rested on the sawhorses. I ran a hand along its edge. Smooth, solid, honest. I sank into the old chair near the back wall and stared out the rain-specked window. I remembered the early days, Anna bringing sandwiches to the shop while I worked, laughing when I got glue in my beard. We were just kids then, but we'd had something real. Or maybe I had, and she'd just been passing through. For a long time, I didn't move. Let the quiet settle over me. But I wasn't going to stay broken. That's not who I am. I've lived through worse. And when a structure is compromised, you don't abandon it. You test every joint. You expose the weak spots. And then you decide, tear it down or rebuild. I was still deciding. That night, I cleared off the desk, pulled out a notepad, and started making a list. Not of revenge. Not yet. Just truth. What I knew. What I needed to know. When. Where. Why. Justice doesn't come from rage. It comes from understanding the full story. And I was going to get mine. Then I saw it. An event reminder on the calendar app synced to our shared email. Friday, 7:30 p.m., Franklin Inn reservation for 2. The same place from the email. But the reservation, it wasn't under her name. It was under mine. The kitchen was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that didn't just sit in the air. It pressed against you. The only sound was the slow tick of the wall clock above the pantry, each second a reminder that the moment I'd been dreading was now here. She walked in just after 9, setting her purse gently on the counter like it might break. Her coat was still damp from the mist outside. She didn't see me at first. My chair was angled in the corner near the window, the light from the hood over the stove casting just enough glow to catch her face. When she didn't notice me, she froze. Not a full startle, just a pause, a flicker in the eyes, the brief tension in her shoulders. That was enough. Long night. I asked, voice calm. Too calm. She blinked. I told you, the center's got that new grant proposal. Don't, I said. My tone stopped her like a slam drawer. Don't lie. A beat passed. Then she slowly unwrapped the scarf from around her neck. Elias, what's this about? I know about Ben. She didn't deny it. Not right away. Her fingers tightened slightly on the scarf. Then she turned toward the sink, her back to me. You've been checking my phone, she said, her voice quiet but edged. That's what you're leading with. I stood, the chair creaking behind me. Not an apology. Not even surprise. She turned back, arms crossed now. What do you want me to say? I stepped forward, resting my hands on the counter between us. Say how you could look me in the eye all these weeks, kiss me goodnight, knowing what you were doing. Say why it had to be someone we both know. Someone tied to everything we've built. I didn't plan for this, she said. Her voice cracked, just a little. It just happened. That's the line. After 23 years, it just happened. She flinched. I let the silence stretch, giving her space to speak if she wanted to. When she didn't, I continued, quieter now. We made vows, Anna. Not just at the altar. Every day we built this life, you and me, we promised each other in 1,000 small ways. I gave you every part of me. You broke our trust, but not my worth. That landed. I saw it in the way her jaw tightened. You stopped seeing me, she said suddenly. That's what you're not saying. Somewhere along the line, you slipped into that shop, into your routines, and I became background noise. You think loyalty is enough? I needed more than predictability. I needed to feel. Her phone buzzed. We both looked at it on the counter. One name on the screen. Ben. I didn't move. I just looked at her. She grabbed it, silenced the call, set it down slowly. I was going to end it, she said. I nodded once. Because you were caught? She opened her mouth, then closed it again. No answer. A sharp knock came at the front door. Neither of us moved. Another knock. Then Jacob's voice, muffled but clear. Eli? You all right? I didn't respond. I kept my eyes on her. Her gaze dropped to the counter. Should I tell him? I asked. Should I bring him in and explain to my own brother why his sister-in-law has been meeting another man at the Franklin Inn? Her voice was almost a whisper. No, I repeated. Because you want to keep this private. You want your mistakes to stay behind this door while I live with the wreckage in public. I didn't want to hurt you, she said, tears finally rising. I didn't mean for it to get this far. But you let it, I said. Every choice along the way, you let it. We stood there, caught in the quiet tension. Her tears fell silently, and I didn't look away. Behind her, the coffee pot clicked as it cooled. The wall clock ticked on. I thought about everything we'd shared, building our home board by board, the miscarried child we grieved in silence, the summers we spent on the porch watching the ocean turn gold. All of it stained now. But even as I stood there in the thick of betrayal, a part of me knew this wasn't just about Anna. It was about what kind of man I wanted to be walking away from this. Justice doesn't always shout. Sometimes it's in the stillness after everything breaks. She reached across the counter gently, as if touching my hand might make it all better. I stepped back, not out of anger, just clarity. I don't know what comes next, I said, but I know it starts with honesty. From both of us. She nodded, wiping her face. What are you going to do? That was the question, wasn't it? I didn't answer. Just walked to the door, opened it. Jacob stood on the porch, concern in his eyes. I'll be out in a minute, I said. He nodded. Behind me, the kitchen lights still glowed. I stepped into the night air, the cool wind against my face like the start of something new, sharp, necessary, uncertain. The first night away from home, I slept in the back room above the workshop. Just an old pull-out cot and a thin blanket. The air smelled like pine dust and linseed oil, comforting in a strange way. It wasn't soft, but it was mine. Honest. Uncomplicated. The hum of the small space heater was the only sound, steady and low. I lay awake staring at the ceiling beams I'd put myself almost a decade ago. I remembered how proud Anna was when we finished this place. She brought sandwiches that day. Took a picture of me leaning on the doorframe, covered in sawdust, smiling like a man who thought he had everything he needed. That version of me felt like a ghost now. The days that followed moved slow. The world didn't stop just because mine cracked open. Clients still called. Orders still needed delivering. The machines buzzed as usual, and I kept my hands busy, planing, cutting, fitting things together. But even as I shaped clean lines out of raw lumber, my mind circled the mess I couldn't fix. Anna called the second night. I didn't pick up. She left a message, calm, careful, practiced. We should talk. Maybe we can fix this, Elias. She didn't say I'm sorry again. Just fix, like we were dealing with a leak under the sink. I deleted the message. The next morning, I met Jacob at the diner. He slid a coffee across the table without saying a word. We sat like that for a minute, the quiet between brothers comfortable, necessary. You hear from her? He finally asked. I nodded. She wants to talk. He sipped his coffee, watching me. What do you want? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I looked out the window. The sun was just cresting the rooftops, casting long shadows over the harbor. A few boats rocked gently in their slips, ropes creaking against wood. I want to stop feeling like a fool, I said. I want my dignity back. He nodded slowly. You'll get it. But first, you've got to decide, what can you live with? That stuck with me. Later that day, I went back to the house while Anna was out. I needed a few things, some clothes, the papers for the truck, an old photo I wasn't ready to let go of. The house felt colder than I remembered. Stiller, like it already knew I didn't belong there anymore. As I walked down the hallway, I passed the framed photo of us on the Oregon coast. Her head on my shoulder, both of us wind-blown, laughing like the future was wide open. I took it down, set it face down on the console table. That evening, she came by the workshop. Said she didn't want to argue, just to talk. She stood just inside the door, arms folded, eyes rimmed red. I don't expect forgiveness, she said. But I need you to know I never stopped loving you. I shook my head. You loved me, and did it anyway? She stepped forward, voice cracking. I was lost, Eli. I felt invisible, like I'd faded into the background of your life. Ben saw me. I held up a hand. Stop. She did. I won't hate you, I said, but I can't trust you. And if I can't trust you, I can't share a life with you. Not this life. Tears fell. She didn't wipe them. Just nodded once, like she already knew that would be my answer. You're really ending it, she asked. I walked over to the small desk by the lathe, pulled out the manila envelope I prepared that morning. Inside, papers for a legal separation, already signed. I'm protecting what I built, I said, not just the business. Me. She took the envelope with shaking hands. I'm not asking for revenge, I added. I just want out clean. You can have the house. I'll keep the workshop. She hesitated. It was our dream, too. It was. But you handed it to someone else the moment you let him in. She didn't argue. As she turned to leave, I said quietly, I hope you find what you're looking for. But it won't be here. The door closed behind her with a soft thud. And for the first time in weeks, the air felt still in a good way. That night, I scented a piece of walnut I'd been avoiding, a custom bookshelf for a local teacher. I ran my fingers along the edge. Smooth, even. Clean lines again. I thought of Jacob's question, what can you live with? This. I could live with this. There's a kind of justice in refusing to be reduced by someone else's choices. In choosing to move forward with your head up, not dragging the past behind you like an old chain. But as I swept the shavings into a bin and turned off the lights, one question lingered like sawdust in the air. Now that I've let go, what comes next? Mornings were the hardest at first. Waking up in the quiet, no scent of coffee drifting from the kitchen, no soft rustle of movement down the hall. Just stillness. I'd lie there for a few minutes, watching the light crawl through the blinds of the apartment above the workshop, reminding myself that this was real. That she wasn't coming back. That I didn't want her to. The divorce moved quickly. Neither of us wanted a drawn-out fight. She took the house. I kept the business. Fair, I guess. But every form I signed felt like chiseling out a piece of history. By the end, it wasn't sadness I felt. It was weariness. Like I'd carried a heavy beam too long, and someone had finally said, you can set that down now. The workshop became my refuge. Tide and timber had always been more than a business. It was breath, ritual, purpose. I threw myself into the work. Late nights planing reclaimed oak, rebuilding an old client's armoire, restoring chairs for the library. Every project was a quiet act of rebuilding, not just for others, but for me. One morning, I found a weathered piece of driftwood wedged between the rocks near the pier. Smooth on one side, torn and knotted on the other. I brought it back, placed it on my bench, and just stared at it for a while. That's how I felt. Worn, weathered, but still standing. I started carving again. Not for clients, just for myself. I shaped the driftwood into something abstract, part wave, part flame, something that spoke without words. I didn't name it. Didn't have to. Jacob stopped by one Saturday with a six-pack and two folding chairs. We sat behind the shop in the breeze, watching the sun dip low over the water. "You look lighter," he said. I nodded. "Still a few nails to pull. But the frame's good." He laughed. "You always speak in with metaphors." I grinned. "Better than breaking down." We didn't talk about Anna that day. Didn't have to. The silence between us was easy, but not every day was smooth. Some nights I'd catch myself setting out 2 plates before dinner. Or I'd hear a song on the radio that sent me straight back to some porch-lit memory. I'd pause, breathe, then move on. No bitterness, just acknowledgement. Then came the fair. Every year, the town hosts a small autumn festival. Craft booths, food stands, music by the water. Tide and Timber had a display table, and I brought a few custom pieces to showcase. As I was setting up, I heard my name. I turned. Ben. He looked exactly how I remembered, put together, polished, like someone who smiled through discomfort. Only this time, there was something else in his eyes. Guilt. Maybe even shame. "Elias," he said, "didn't expect to see you here." I kept my voice steady. "I built this booth. Why wouldn't I be here?" He glanced at the display, then back at me. "Look, I know I'm the last person you want to see. I never meant to hurt anyone." I looked him in the eye. "You knew she was married." He didn't reply. I stepped forward, close enough to lower my voice but still be heard. "You took my trust, but not my future." Ben swallowed, then nodded. "I'm sorry." I nodded once. "Be better next time." Then I turned away. Simple as that. I didn't need a scene. I didn't need closure from him. I already had it. After the fair, I stayed behind, helping a young couple load their new bench into their truck. They asked about custom work, and we exchanged numbers. As they drove off, I stood by the booth, watching the sunset throw gold across the bay. That night, I placed the driftwood sculpture in the front window of the shop. No price tag, just a symbol. The next morning, I unlocked the shop early, sunlight pouring in through the glass. The place smelled like cedar and varnish. I ran a hand along the smooth curve of a finished chair and felt something I hadn't in a long timepiece. There were still days that caught me off guard, but they came less often now. And when they did, I met them with steady hands and clear eyes. Justice, I realized, isn't always a verdict. Sometimes it's just a man choosing not to break when the world expects him to. As I swept the floor and opened the front door for business, Sarah walked in holding a newspaper. "You might want to see this," she said, handing it to me. A headline near the bottom caught my eye. "City contract withdrawn from Franklin redevelopment project." Ben's name was in the article. Something about a conflict of interest. Misuse of public funds. I read it twice, then looked up. Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Guess karma still keeps a ledger." I folded the paper, set it aside. "I'm not gloating," I said, "but I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel earned." She smiled, handing me a coffee. "You ever wonder what she thinks now?" I took the cup, sipped slowly. "I try not to," I said, but the thought lingered. The year can do strange things. It doesn't erase, not really, but it softens. Like the sea rounding the edges of stone, time doesn't forget, it just teaches you how to carry the weight. I built a good rhythm by then. Mornings started with a jog along the harbor trail, the salty breeze waking me up better than any alarm ever could. Most days, I opened the workshop by 7, coffee in hand, music low. I had a couple of part-time apprentices now, good kids eager to learn. I liked the quiet clatter of tools, the smell of fresh-cut maple. It kept my hands busy and my heart steady. Life wasn't perfect, but it was honest, and that was enough. One Saturday afternoon, I stopped by the town spring market, picked up some honey, a few handmade candles, browsed a used bookstall. That's when I saw her. Anna. She was standing by a flower stand, eyes on a small pot of daffodils, hair pinned up like she used to do in the early days. She looked tired. Not ill, just worn. The kind of wear that settles into the corners of a person when they've been carrying regret longer than they meant to. She saw me before I could turn away. Our eyes met. She offered a small smile. Elias, she said, walking over. Anna. We stood in the middle of the crowd, two people who used to know each other completely, now strangers with memories. You look good, she said, voice soft. Thanks. You too. A pause. I heard about your sculpture, she added. The one in the gallery last month. Yeah, that was unexpected, I said. It started as a scrap piece, just turned into something more. She nodded, eyes flicking to the ground. You always had that gift. I waited. Let the silence do what it needed to do. I'm not here to stir anything up, she said. Just thought I should say I'm sorry. For all of it. I studied her face. There was no performance in her voice, no plea, just quiet truth. I believe you, I said, and I hope you're okay. She swallowed. I'm getting there. We might have left it at that, but then she said something that stopped me cold. I had to sell the house, she said. Lost the grant job. Turns out Ben wasn't who I thought. Left town when the investigation started. I didn't move. The Franklin Project, she said. There were emails. My name was on some of the filings. I didn't know what he was doing, but it didn't matter. Guilt by association. And well, her voice faded. For a moment, I saw the whole chain unravel behind her eyes. What she'd chosen, what she'd lost. I see, I said. Calm. Measured. She looked like she might cry, but didn't. I'm not telling you this for pity, she added. I just thought you should know. I nodded. Thank you. And I meant it. Not for her pain, but for the truth. We said goodbye. No hugs. No promises. Just two people moving on in different directions. As I walked away, a warm breeze came up off the water, tugging gently at my shirt. I passed a family setting up a picnic on the grass, a little boy chasing bubbles in the wind. Laughter floated past me, and I found myself smiling. Back at the shop that evening, I stood in the doorway, watching the sun cast gold across the bay. I thought about how far I'd come, about how broken I felt sitting in this same spot a year ago, and how whole I felt now. I had my hands, my work, my peace, and maybe, just maybe, a new beginning. Sarah had invited me to a dinner next weekend. Nothing formal, just a few friends. I said yes without overthinking it. These days, I don't make decisions out of guilt or habit. I make them for me. Sometimes people ask if I regret staying quiet through it all, if I should have shouted louder, pointed fingers, scorched the earth. Maybe, but I know myself. And I know this. Justice isn't always about punishment. Sometimes it's choosing not to carry someone else's weight anymore. The past broke me, but I rebuilt stronger. That's the line I live by now. As I turned out the lights and locked up for the night, I stepped into the truck and pulled onto the road. The sky was wide open ahead, streaked with orange and fading blue. The kind of sky that doesn't promise anything, just invites you to keep driving. I rolled the window down, and for the first time in a long while, I felt free.